everyone, it is Samantha Lux. Welcome back to my channel. Last week I uploaded a video in which I responded to Blair's appearance on Jubilee, the trans liberals versus trans conservatives episode, and I was wrong. Instead of doing what I normally do in my Jubilee reactive videos, I chose to focus solely on Blair's responses and her positions on the prompts because she is somebody that I've covered here on my channel before and somebody who my audience recognizes as having beliefs that I personally do not agree with. Definitely in the past made more video essay style videos in which I really try to break down every single argument that is made in the Jubilee video. This video was extremely long. It was an hour and a half. So I chose to, instead of really doing a deep dive into each of the different responses, I chose to just crack jokes, have a little fun, and provide that entertainment for people who are already understanding of my positions. I understand that when I do my Jubilee videos in a certain way and then I stray from course, it can seem like, I'm cutting things out on purpose, but I'm being accused by people, including Blair White herself, of lying and twisting Blair's responses to construct a narrative. I'm being accused of defending violent threats from the liberal side. And worst of all, I'm being accused of not having good arguments to combat Blair's positions. I was just trying to keep the video kind of concise and not 2 hours long. In the future, I definitely will keep the same format as my previous versions. Noted. So for today's video, I would firstly like to address the concerns that you have left on my channel because y'all are concerned. Y'all are concerned, not my followers. I feel like my subscribers were all pretty content with the video that I posted. But I did get a lot of comments from other people who were just not so happy about my responses. And it's fair. Some of the criticism that I received was definitely fair. So that's why I want to address it. Okay, y'all got me. You guys got me good. Let's talk about it. So the top criticism that I y'all got me good, like I'm saying. The top comments that I saw in that video were calling me out for not mentioning that another panelist threatened Blair with violence. Let me be perfectly clear, just so that nobody can be like, well, she defends violence. She thinks being violent is okay. I do not. I do not think that violence or even threats of violence I don't think that's inappropriate. I don't think that is appropriate ever, especially in a political panel or a political debate or even just a regular panel. Like, it's just not appropriate. This part, though, people are saying that I left it out to be manipulative and to just paint Blair as this awful person and the other side as angels. That is just not the case. I truly, like, genuinely, no fingers crossed, did not hear it. Like, bitch, it was a 90-minute video. I did hear her say, keep it cute. So I was just like, oh, okay, they're being petty. They're being dramatic. It's not what I'm interested in. I came there for the content, for the responses to the actual prompts, not for like petty drama. What I didn't hear Blossom say, the other panelist, was, I know your bodyguard is outside, but keep it cute. Blossom has said that this was not what she intended. She did not intend to threaten Blair with violence, but objectively speaking, when watching this video, it does come off like she is threatening Blair. Keep it cute. I know your bodyguard is outside, to me implies that if you don't keep it cute, I'm going to beat you up even if your bodyguard is outside. You know what I'm saying? That is completely inappropriate. I totally understand how me not addressing this part of the video in my original video could seem like I am endorsing or forgiving this behavior. That's not the case. I do not ever support violence in a political debate or a panel, whatever it is. It's just not appropriate. The next criticism that I got, and then after this, we are going to go through the debate again. But yeah, the next criticism that I fairly received was that the liberals were attacking Blair as soon as she got out there, and Jubilee edited the video and switched things around to make it seem like Blair was, coming with her arms ready to swing. And I don't know if that's the expression, but you guys know what I mean. So today we are going to be reacting to the extended cut, the extended version of this Jubilee debate. There's a lot of like little things that I think are firstly funny. Second of all, just like, very telling. We are going to get into it, but whether it was the first prompt or the second prompt or the last prompt, I don't think that Blair's career should have been brought up, questioned, or belittled. I don't want to say that I would act perfectly in that moment, but we need to do our best to make sure that we are not making these arguments personal. Like, we can agree, we can really, really disagree on the prompts and the policies, but we should keep it to that, talking about the prompts and the policies. By no means did me not including this part in my original video mean that I approved of or endorsed or supported this behavior at all. But for the people that were commenting, oh, well, you didn't mention it, so you must be in full support. No, babe, that's not how it works. Just because I don't say that I disagree with something does not mean that I agree with it. There were a few more critiques that I saw commented on my last video. Some of them were legitimate. Some of them were fair criticisms, fair complaints, if you want to say. Some others, more so, were just people bullying me, literally just bullying me. I was bullied. I'm just kidding. I have a very thick skin. I've been being bullied since I was literally like 5 years old. Try me, bitch. I'm just kidding. Please don't try me, I'll cry. Now I would like to watch a bit of the panel again. I am still gonna have to cut things out because it's too long. Jubilee, your videos are too long.
I support the transgender military ban. Can the agreeers please step forward?
Let's take a second to really think about this prompt, right? Agreeing with it is a very intense statement. The trans military ban in question, I believe, is the one that was administered under the Trump administration. And this ban banned anybody who was taking HRT, anybody who had transitioned medically at all, with the only exception being if you had served in the military prior and had a diagnosis of gender dysphoria that you were being treated for. This would effectively ban anyone who's trans and who has transitioned, regardless of their physical ability, mental stability, any of those other factors. Like personally, I don't think I could serve in the military. Not me. But I do know for certain that there are trans people that have successfully served in the military with no problems. So a full-on ban that generalizes anybody that has medically transitioned is unfounded. As I mentioned in my last video, the RAND Corporation, the RAND Corporation, which is a nonpartisan research institute, ran a full study on trans people in the military and determined that there was no threat to, unit readiness, no threat to the efficacy of the military. Even the conservative panelists on this panel agreed that if you can do your job, nobody really cares if you're trans or not. They even found in this study that there was not even a significant financial burden. So there's literally no reason to do it other than you think that being trans somehow makes you less mentally sane, less physically capable of doing things, which is a prejudice that is not factual.
I think that oftentimes when you talk about trans people in the military, people forget that most places, if we're talking about feet on the ground and really going into war zones, are really dangerous for trans people. And so it's really an extra risk.
You're talking about the culture that exists over
there.
Yeah,
the Middle East, it's
so
like that's not exactly trans friendly. It's actually the opposite.
Okay.
So, that's one reason.
This is one of the factors that needs to be weighed by individual trans people who are looking to join the military. It's not a reason to ban all trans people. Like, you're going into war, babe. They're going to war. War is not safe. Let's draw a little comparison really quick. Many people argued that women, cisgender female women, should not have been allowed to enlist. And honestly, it's a lot of the same reasoning. I mean, even the ones that they're going to bring up in a little bit, it's a lot of the same things, just repackaged, reworded, and like new identities thrown in. People claim that women would be more likely to be victimized in combat, which is probably true. Should you ban women from serving when they're going into war zones with misogynistic governments? No, we do not do that. We allow people to make decisions about their own lives. People argued that females would lessen unit readiness and cohesion. Again, this is something that is argued against trans people in the military all the time. That was disproven. Oh, and people also said that they were physically, mentally, and emotionally unstable. Not unstable, but not stable enough to go to the military. Today, it is widely recognized that women make the military stronger. So I hate that Blair is framing this as this protection of trans people when in reality, she's taking away rights from trans people. She's taking away job opportunities for trans people. For what reason? Who fucking knows?
And then, the medications that we take sometimes put us in conflict with being able to actually be combat ready. But there is some nuance here, obviously, like if there was a trans cook or a trans medic, I'm not exactly going to be upset, but for the most part, when it comes to combat.
This is not true. She's lying. Trans men take testosterone. So I don't know what world you're living in that testosterone makes you less physically capable, but it's not this one. Also, testosterone is allowed in the military, so it's not even that it's a controlled substance because cis men take testosterone in the military while they're serving if it's prescribed by a doctor for, hormone imbalance. Trans women take estrogen and testosterone blockers, which will bring our muscle mass and physical ability down to a more cis female level. Meaning if non-transgender women are strong enough to serve, so are trans women. Just can't reinforce enough that these are literally the same exact arguments that were used against women serving in the military and against gay people serving in the military. When women were allowed to first enlist, you know what their job roles were? They were only allowed to be nurses. They were only allowed to be cooks.
I hate supporting it because it goes to the narrative of the should athletes compete in sports, but
Trans athletes?
Yeah, the drugs.
So you're going to simultaneously say that trans women should not compete because the medicine that we take does not bring us close enough to cis female levels, but also that the medications we take make us so combat unready that it puts us below cis women. Where's the logic?
Do weaken us, so we're not, like you just said, combat ready, but we're also not as physically strong as the guy counterparts standing right next to him.
You're not a guy. You're not a guy. I'm not as strong as the guy next to me. Most of the females here probably are not as strong as some of the other guys here. They're not banned.
Person that served in the military on this
Yeah.
entire panel.
You should have spoke first.
It's okay. The thing about it is, I think that there is a lot of nuance in this. I actually have friends that are currently serving in the military. I think there was a lot of misrepresentation of what the trans ban actually did. As a former officer in the Army, I think that when you have soldiers, if you have surgeries, they go on profile, which means they can't actually do their job. They can't do PT. If you have bottom surgery, it takes a year. And so as a leader, that person's filling a position of a job of somebody that should be doing it. I don't mind somebody who is actually on hormones going there, because there's a lot of people, people take PTSD medications overseas. They actually take 6 months of medication with them. So a full-out ban I don't necessarily support, because I think that everybody in the military, as long as you can do your job, you can go in there and nobody really cares. But it is those times when you can't, if you can't perform your job, that becomes an issue.
So did you hear the little tidbits, first of all? That people don't care if you're trans in the military as long as you can do your job. And that they bring 6 months worth of medications with them when they go. But again, the parallels to women being allowed to serve in the military are stunning. They said, oh, if we allow women to enlist, then they're all going to get pregnant and then half of our force will be missing. It's so funny. It's literally the exact same thing. The RAND study did actually address this. Only about 30 to 130, 30 to 130, a very small amount of individuals won't be ready to deploy because they've had gender affirming surgery. That is about 0.1% of the military, 0.1%, indicating little to no impact on military readiness. Is that really a reason to ban people? To ban a whole generalized group of people? No.
And then also, if we want to just get super real, you have the trans suicide rate. And if you really want to compound that by the veteran suicide rate, that's not exactly a concoction for very positive results. So I see how a trans ban could actually benefit us, and Lord knows I'm not trying to get drafted, so.
This is not a justification for a ban. It's a justification for better resources for veterans, for better mental health care for people that are suffering after serving our country.
I think it's very discriminatory to keep trans people out of the military. We pay our bills here, we pay our taxes here, we are Americans, we deserve to serve this country as well. However, you all did raise some great points about the concern and safety of trans people. And I do agree that something does need to be done about that to protect us. Who's protecting us in the military? Who is?
If you're even diagnosed with mild social anxiety, you're not eligible to enter the military. If you have a crooked left, pinky toe, you're not eligible. So discriminatory, that word sounds pretty, in today's climate, very much like, oh no, discrimination, but it's not always bad. Sometimes it's for the safety, and it's when it comes to the military and when it comes to keeping America safe, that has priority over anyone's feelings.
Discrimination.
So trans people do have to meet all the other qualifications that a non-trans person has to meet. It's not like we get to bypass any of the regulations. We still have to meet all the requirements. Not banning people just means that the fact that you're trans does not exempt you. If somebody is not physically, mentally, emotionally stable and fit to serve in the military, they won't get in. Presuming that trans people are physically, mentally, or emotionally unfit because they're trans is a preconceived opinion. And you know what we call preconceived opinions? Prejudice. And you know what we call prejudice against trans people? Transphobia, babe. Transphobia. To Blossom's point, I do think that there should be non-discrimination laws and stuff like that in place for people in the military. But to say that we need somebody to protect us in the military, it's aren't y'all supposed to be protecting? Aren't y'all the ones that are the fucking soldiers, I need protecting, girl, not them.
It is important to protect all trans people in the military.
Well, we can't waste
And so what if the best
resources
way to protect them
protecting
is not putting them in the Middle East with Muslims that are going to kill them?
Well, I just want to interject your point about.
Listen, the purpose of banning people from the military or not allowing people to enlist in the military is not to keep them safe. It's to ensure that the military is as effective as it can be. Again, let's draw that comparison. Let's do it. What if the best way to protect women was to not allow them to go into war? What if the best way to protect women was to keep them at home? I'm sure a lot of female soldiers would be alive today if they just weren't allowed to go, if they just were, locked in their houses and chained to the floor. No duh. People need to have autonomy over their bodies. People need to be able to make choices about what they want to do with their bodies. If somebody is physically and mentally and emotionally ready to go and they want to go, fucking thank you, girl. Thank you. Purple heart for you.
A lot of their suicide issues actually revolve around access to finances. And the military is one of the highest employers of transgender people. So we actually see the suicide rate drop. And for me
That's a
personally,
good point, but it's one of the highest employers of anybody.
But if you're suicidal and you go into a job that has a high likelihood of PTSD, causing PTSD and all these other issues, then it becomes a big issue because then you already have one mental illness and then you're compounding it with more.
Fucking come on, it's making me so mad. It's making me so mad all over again. They're so fucking stupid. Oh my God. If you're already suicidal, you're not getting into the military. It doesn't matter if you're trans. Fucking use your brain. Why are you first of all, don't even agree with the trans military ban. You don't. You have no problem with hormones and you have no problem with people serving in the military. I'm talking to Sarah right now. She has no problem with either of those things, which would be banned by the law that she just came out in support of. So why are you sitting on the conservative side? Why are you over there?
And when you're on, a very strict regimen of, if you're trans and if you're really trans, and we can get into who's really trans later because I'm
Yeah,
going
I
to say
wanna know
about
what
that.
you're
But
talking about
if you're going
that.
to be on hormones,
Oh my God, Sasha's so cute. I thought the liberal side attacked Blair first. Even if you don't think that non-binary people should be able to call themselves trans, which we will get into in a little bit, Blair came in ready to say, this is trans, I get to say who's trans, I get to validate identities and invalidate identities. She came in ready, guns a-blazing, ready to take out those non-binary people. It's very weird. It's very weird.
right? You're not always going to have access to those drugs when you're deployed and when you're in those situations. That's why I say if you're, a line cook or something, if you're whatever, that's one thing. But if we're talking about combat, you're not exactly going to have access to your testosterone block.
Can we just replay the tape? Can we just replay the part where Sarah literally said they bring 6 months worth of medication? Because it was 2 seconds ago. 2 seconds ago she said that. And now Blair is, well, they don't have access to their hormones. They don't have access to their medication. Yes, they do.
How do you know that? Because medical
they
care
don't have
is
those kind of
covered in the
pharmacies in the Middle
medical
East.
care is covered in the military, so they should have access to that. So that is false information.
Not
and
necessarily.
also
No,
you guys
you
are
have to-
forgetting
Right,
the fact, well,
but-
hold on. You guys have all forgotten the fact of what is the flip side for these transgender individuals that are signing up for the military and they're taken out, and that was their life plan. Where are they supposed to work and where is their employment supposed to be?
No, I
because the
agree
mental
with
illness
Bill.
that happens
I agree, it's
through
horrible.
homelessness and the lack of resources
agree,
that
it's
come.
horrible.
So
Correct.
that is also
They
the flip
actually-
side of that. So if folks
but they
don't
didn't
have,
kick
hold
anybody
on one
out.
second, but if they don't have access to a job that could offer them
Take your
support and research and access to medication, access to benefits, lifetime benefits, that's something that most transgender people in any sector of any
So do you
job.
want an answer to your question, or are you just going to round? Because I can answer. You said, what about those people that were kicked out? So if you're kicked out and it was once, the norm
But
that
what's
you
the
could.
resources you're
I'm
offering
speaking
them?
though. If you're kicked out and it once was the norm for you to participate in the military, that's sad. But at the same time, if that is what is determined for the ultimate safety and effectiveness of the military, nothing should come before that.
But again, Blair was the first one to be rude. She's not looking at Shane as he's talking, even cutting him off, only to say it's horrible, but she offers no solutions, only pseudo sympathy, right? That's sad, but that's horrible, but. And then again, like I said, offers no solutions to the trans people who have literally lost their jobs, lost their life plans, could literally be homeless on the brink of suicide. No solutions. And again, I'm not going to keep repeating this, but she's just wrong to say that trans people make the military weaker. They don't. The data is there. The experiences are there. I don't know where you're getting this information from.
Blair, have you ever
Because the
worked
second
directly
bomb,
with
because the
trans
second
people?
bomb.
Have you ever worked
I
directly
am right
with,
now.
No,
We're
directly
surrounded by
in
them.
services in terms of nonprofits and
Sir,
actually
she's a
getting
trans
clientele?
She's not
That's my
grassroots.
entire
She
career.
is not a grassroots
Not
person
grassroots.
because truth be told, a lot of our
does
community
that even mean?
is in grassroots.
So as I mentioned before, this is not good. We shouldn't discuss personal lives, anything like that. It should stay on topic, right? Additionally, as a YouTuber myself, I don't like the sentiment that, the work that I do, the work that Blair does is somehow less than. I've seen both sides and they are both valuable. I will never argue that Blair has not changed people's minds on trans people in the trans community. I do not agree with her on most things, but I will admit that she has likely opened a lot of people's minds to the acceptance of trans people, at least a very specific type of trans person. That all being said, I need to acknowledge that her content has historically been, in my opinion, purposely anti-trans. Content like her videos on Riley Dennis, this was a long time ago, I know, but the same themes are still very much present. If you aren't familiar with Blair's content on Riley Dennis, she had like a little arc for a moment there in which she was consistently mocking another trans YouTuber's appearance and denying her transness due to Blair's perceived lack of transitioning, right? Blair did apologize for these things, but this was only after she learned that Riley had done the same amount in her transition as Blair had done in her own. Let's be clear, this was transphobia. And invalidating somebody else's transness because you personally don't think it's real is the most basic level of transphobia. She's also made numerous videos mocking other people's trans identities, laughing at their appearances, rejecting their trans identity. Something that, again, if it was done by somebody who wasn't trans, would immediately be recognized as anti-trans. So as much as I disapprove of the liberals, bringing up Blair's career and Blair's history with helping the trans community, looking at the people that she currently aligns herself with, I can understand them questioning how good of an impact she's really had.
I'm not going to denigrate what you guys do, but for you guys to I'm speaking. For you guys to immediately come in and what do you do? What do you do? As if I haven't spent almost a decade making.
See, this is the part that I will point out. She's like, you immediately came in ready to attack me, ready to question my career, which I don't agree with. The career should not have been brought up. But if we're just being real, if we're just, pointing out the facts, Blair was rude first. Blair cut people off first.
This is where y'all's privilege come in, because if y'all don't need
My privilege?
services
My
from
content is a
trans,
resource.
if you do not need
First of
services
all,
from
ma'am, don't come from my
nonprofits
privilege.
that are trans-led,
Because
you
I
have
was raised by
privilege
drug
and you
addicts.
have
I had
access.
HIV.
I'm sorry.
I create the resources.
I would rather
I create
work
the
with
resources. My
detransitioners
content
than
is a
trans
resource.
people. So we're going to work with detransitioners who actually need our help.
Yeah, no, we shouldn't assume people's privilege. Duh. We can't assume that we know everything about everybody else's life. We can make comments on, privilege allowing us to do certain things that if you didn't have that privilege, you wouldn't be able to do. But accusing people of saying that you can do this and I can't, it's definitely not a good look, especially when it's a debate or a panel like this when you're probably meeting for the first time. That being said, I think Blossom was speaking in a more general sense. I don't think that she would have continued to, go after Andrew's privilege after he said that. If she did, I would call her out for it, but.
Who's ready to go to combat and who's ready to go in, like they'll get in. I think there are people who are like able to do that, maybe people who aren't. And I feel like that will be determined without just a ban across the board. And yeah.
So it wasn't actually a full ban, though. That's what people don't realize, okay? So
You can still enlist.
Nobody got kicked out of the military. They didn't
Yeah.
kick a single person out of the military who came forward and had gender dysphoria. Two, it's more open to serve under the ban than it was under Don't Ask, Don't Tell.
Yeah.
Okay? So you could actually be a trans person and present however you wanted off duty. You could go to a ball in a dress and nobody cared, and they couldn't kick you out. But you could actually enlist the same way. Knowing that and serving in the military, it's not a right. They can disqualify you for any reason. Physical, anything. People get kicked out all the time because they can't pass PT test.
Right.
So why are we worrying so much about? I mean, if we can pass PT test, and overseas, yeah, you don't necessarily have access to refrigerators for your testosterone or any of that other stuff. So if you're taking injections, it's a lot
I'm
different.
supposed to refrigerate it?
I don't know. I don't take
And
testosterone.
that's gonna melt.
She goes, I don't know. I think this woman just loves Blair. 5 minutes ago, she said, they do actually bring medications with them, 6 months worth of medication, so I don't have any problem with them being on hormones. But now after Blair said that they can't have hormones, she goes, well, they won't have refrigerators for your stuff that you have to refrigerate. You don't even have to refrigerate it. She doesn't even know what she's talking about. She just needed a little point to, position herself as conservative. Sarah is right by saying that they did grandfather in anybody who was being treated for gender dysphoria before the ban was enacted, but the rest is bullshit. She says you can present however you want off duty and go to balls and dresses and do all that kind of stuff and nobody can kick you out. What she did not mention was that you're not allowed to take hormone replacement therapy, meaning a large chunk of trans people would not be allowed to enlist. You must serve in the unit aligned with the sex that you were assigned at birth, effectively meaning you can't be trans in the military unless you do not medically transition, have never medically transitioned, and do not want to serve in the unit that corresponds with your gender identity. Like, aren't the conservatives the ones that say that most trans people want to medically transition in some way because it's like this medical disorder or whatever? But now the ban doesn't actually ban trans people because you're allowed to enlist as long as you don't take medications or transition? They just don't make sense. These arguments are not coherent.
This way, there are
to
far
do it
less
for high school too,
debilitating
or
things that will
education.
disqualify you from access to the military than trans. And if you want to put it on a scale, trans is one of those things that for a lot of people is quite debilitating, whether it's mentally, physically, whatever. And so the idea that, like I said, if you have literally like a stubbed toe, you're not getting in, right? If you have, you know, social anxiety, if you have depression, any of these things that are less mentally taxing than gender dysphoria, all those things, then why is it that we should have like a go around because we're trans? I go with what the generals say. I go with what the people at the top say. This is what is the most effective way to have our military.
Just not General Milley.
I just really
Just
hope
not
that the
General
people
Milley.
at the
No,
top
not
that
him.
you're-
You know what I
just
mean?
So, like I said, there's no go around, right? There's no go around because you're trans. You still have to meet all the other requirements that everybody else meets, right? If somebody's gender dysphoria is really bad and debilitating, they should not be able to serve. I do agree with that. If they've transitioned and their gender dysphoria is alleviated or, minimized, it's under control and stable, like a lot of trans peoples are after they transition, there is no reason to ban them. Just because somebody medically transitioned in the past does not mean that they are not physically, mentally, or emotionally fit to serve.
So that too.
I just really hope that the people at the top that you're referring to aren't transphobic, because let's be clear of the isms that are in the military
we
that
live
a
in
lot
America,
of us face.
people are
Excuse
allowed
me,
to
I'm
be.
speaking. Do not interrupt a black trans woman when she's speaking.
You've
Let's be
interrupted
very
me
clear.
hella
When it
times.
comes to
Hella times.
isms,
Did the interrupter just say
if
use
you are
your
black,
skin tone
if
to
you
say
are
you couldn't
black,
interrupt her?
if you are black and
That's
trans
amazing.
and you want to go into the military, I am quite sure that my experience would not look the same as y'all's. And if we can't wake that up, then we're really being
They don't
complicit.
like it.
I don't think your
But you-
skin tone makes any difference.
Well,
As someone-
yes,
again,
it does.
no,
Well,
as
I'm
somebody-
sorry.
no, as somebody who's
But it
serving in the
doesn't.
military,
For you to
as
tell a
somebody
black
who- no,
person that
as-
is so
as somebody who's
problematic.
serving-
For
as
you
some-
to
why
tell
do
a
you have
person
to
of
put
color
black in
here,
front of it?
because this is my experience and this is my reality. First of all,
It has nothing
that
to
is
do
so
with your trans
disrespectful
story.
to tell a person
I'm
of
gonna have an
color,
aneurysm.
a black person, how they should feel. How dare you sit up there and say
no,
that?
it's disrespectful.
I'll be
as a
quiet.
white
Hold on
person.
just
You
a second. Let me
screamed
finish
at
my
him,
point.
and you
I did not
just-
scream
yes,
at a
you
point.
did.
No,
No,
you're
you
the one that was
screamed.
coming combative.
Rewind the tape,
You
you
wanted me
screamed.
here and I'm
You
here.
screamed.
So what you
Rewind
gonna
the
do?
tape, that was good.
Let's
You
stop.
wanted me here, so I'm here.
Replay.
People were so mad about this part. People were so mad, so mad, so mad, so mad. You can't play the race card. Stop playing the race card. Meh, 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 meh. No, listen, I do understand that. I get it. That we should not interrupt anybody when they are giving their opinion during a debate that they were invited to. But I feel like as the only black woman in the room, you're allowed to bring up the differences that you see because of that different lens that you hold. I feel like that's a very fair thing to offer the panel. What I don't think was fair was everybody immediately demanding that being black had nothing to do with your experience in the military. That is charged and very unnecessary, especially with Sarah, who was literally like screaming and saying, as somebody who served, as somebody who served, as somebody who served. You can give your opinion, just like hold on. Getting heated in a debate like this is never a good look, especially when you're on the liberal trans side. People watching these videos are already so primed to think that trans people are hysterical and, loud and obnoxious. Not saying that you were hysterical, loud, or obnoxious, or that it's fair that they place these prejudices on us. But the reality is, as soon as we do raise our voices in these settings, the rest of what we say just goes out the window. They don't hear it.
You need to calm down.
No, you
We're
do,
gonna
honey.
change the rules.
Oh my God, someone get a Xanax for her.
Oh,
Rules
keep
are,
it
let's
cute,
move
girl. Keep it real cute.
Oh,
Your
that's
bodyguard's
inappropriate,
outside,
but the rest
keep
of
it
shit
real
isn't.
cute
Okay.
now.
This should not happen during a debate, a political debate, a panel, whatever you want to call it. A lot of what happened so far in this video should not have happened on a political panel like this. Jubilee, get it together. Reel them in. Reel them in. What I do really dislike, and I've noticed this in a lot of Jubilee videos, is that people really focus on the drama of it. They're so distracted by participants getting a good diss or a good burn or a good gotcha moment that they don't listen to the actual content of the responses. You know what I'm saying? And because of this, I feel like the panelists on both sides are really trying to get their good little soundbite. You know what I mean? It just doesn't make for a good, productive conversation.
Not speak when somebody else is speaking.
Fair.
This is a debate that we have as civilians that the military doesn't have, okay? Just plain and simple. If you can do your job, nobody cares who you are, what you do, what your extracurricular activities outside of the military are. All they care is that they can count on the person to the left and right of them.
Get your ass up. Get your goddamn ass up, girl. You just simply do not agree with the prompt. You simply do not agree with the prompt. And you went out there so gung-ho, just so ready to defend this prompt when you don't agree with it. You just don't. This type of trans conservative is like a trans conservative TM. They got a little trademark. It's a brand. They will always find reasons, no matter how illogical or unnecessary, they will always find a reason to support conservative positions.
It is a safety concern for trans women to share a female restroom. Agreeers?
Well,
There's
it depends.
Yes. So I think that to start it off though too is it's not necessarily saying that trans women.
Okay, hold on. The first things that were said, there's nuance. I'm not talking about trans women. Then why are you here? You can't even agree with the prompt without starting with the disclaimer that you don't actually agree with the prompt. These questions and these prompts are not light subjects. You know what I mean? It's not like pineapple on pizza, yes or no. They are extremely politically relevant questions. States all over the country are enacting laws that ban trans people from using the bathroom that aligns with their gender identity. I was just in Florida a few weeks ago. If I peed in a female bathroom, in a woman's bathroom, I could be arrested and charged with a criminal offense. It is so incredibly irresponsible to sit on this panel as a trans person and agree with the prompt that trans women are a safety concern, regardless of whether or not you start your statement with, there's nuance. I'm not talking about this specific trans person. You're supporting the prompt, which kind of translates into you supporting these laws. Could some people fraudulently claim to be trans to enter the female bathroom and do predatory things? Unfortunately, yes, that is a possibility. But does that risk qualify considering all trans people going into female bathrooms a safety concern? I hate to be a stickler for definitions, but a safety concern is a very specific thing. It's defined as any condition, practice, or violation that causes a substantial probability of physical harm, property loss, and/or environmental impact. Do you think that allowing all trans women to access female restrooms is going to cause a substantial probability of harm towards female people? A substantial probability. Really? Like, why are you twisting and molding the question into something that you can agree with? Wouldn't it be easier to just say, no, it's not a safety concern, but maybe some people could take advantage of it and we should probably, charge them? Clearly, you do not agree with banning all trans women from bathrooms. That is what's happening.
It's not necessarily saying that trans women. It all comes down to self-ID. When we moved into a self-ID process, there are a lot of people, there are a lot of men just simply self-IDing into being trans women to utilize the female restroom and to harm women.
The fact is, if somebody is doing illegal things in the bathroom, like preying on women, getting sexually aroused and exposing that to people, that's already committing a crime, right? Playing the trans card isn't going to help them. Playing the trans card is not going to stop them from getting in trouble. And banning all trans women because of those men is not going to protect anybody. It's going to put trans women needlessly in harm's way.
There's people that do the whole trans thing for multiple incentives, right? There's people who do it for a sexual fetish and they're getting their rocks off by being in that restroom. There's a photo or it was a video that went viral, I think like just 2 weeks ago, with some like whole man with a boner in the women's restroom. And there's just some poor woman filming it. Like, am I just supposed to like accept that this is here? So I think there's levels to it. I think that trans women who are actually trans, we're talking gender dysphoria, transitions, making the effort, probably once you reach a certain point in your transition where you can actually assimilate within that space and not cause a disruptance, that would probably be the ideal time to start doing that, right? Whereas, a cross-dresser who is emboldened to, in this current climate, say that they're trans, because now anything is trans if you say so, that person should probably stay absolutely out of women's restrooms, because you're there to get your rocks off and the women are there to take a poop and a pee.
If somebody is transitioning purely for sexual reasons, I also would be uncomfortable being a part of that. But again, we need to bring it back to the bigger picture. The amount of people who transition simply to access female spaces is so minuscule that it is absolutely ridiculous to use that to say that allowing all trans women into female spaces or female restrooms is a safety concern. Like, that's wild. As far as the video goes, I don't know if it was real or not. Nobody on the panel really knows if it was real or not. If it was real, ew. But I don't know. I don't know if it's real. And I do believe that anti-trans activists would stage something like that. But again, if it did happen, it shouldn't be. If you support it, you're weird. And if it was an anti-trans thing, I fucking knew it. Allowing trans people to access the bathroom that aligns with their gender identity does not suddenly give predators the confidence to go into places that they're not supposed to be. So instead of focusing on this boogeyman of trans people in the bathroom, trans people in the bathroom, trans women in the female bathroom, maybe focus on the things that are actually causing problems. Like, have you seen the fucking stall doors in America? They are not covering anything. If you want people to have more privacy in the bathroom, fight for better fucking stall doors. Make bathrooms safer in general. To her saying that people should use the bathroom that causes the least disruptance, I do agree. If somebody is, maybe pre-transition male to female and they're still presenting male, they should probably use a men's restroom or a third bathroom space. I don't think many people disagree on that. The problem that I see though, and Sarah actually did point it out as well, is if we create this boogeyman of the trans person, then people are going to be on the lookout for trans people. Sometimes they're just wrong, right? They're just wrong. And so they're calling out cisgender people for being trans when they're just not trans. Secondly, it is easy to just say like, oh, just work on your transition so that you can assimilate perfectly and nobody will know that you're trans. And then, it won't cause any problems. That's easy to say, right? For other people, passing is really just not an option, right? No matter how hard they work, how many surgeries they have, how many hormones they fucking pop, they will never be able to pass. Does that mean they should never be allowed to go into the women's bathroom? As Blair demonstrated with her Riley Dennis content, we should not judge how far somebody is in their transition based on how they look. Like, do I think that trans women should go into the bathroom and like boy mode before they transition? No. Do I think that they should have to wait this amount of time and have this ID marker with them and take these medications before they're even allowed to pee in somewhere that they won't get beaten up? No.
It's a self-preservation issue, right? So if somebody's in the bathroom and they have a boner, that looks bad on all of us. And when people, when our community's not calling that out and not saying that this is wrong.
I'm just, to your point, how many cases has that occurred?
It happens a lot. We see it's happening all the time.
No, I have to actually see
Twitter
data.
accounts. There's Twitter accounts with millions of followers that show this stuff multiple times a day.
Okay, now I know what we're talking about.
This bitch did not just cite gays against groomers in a political debate.
We're showing that these types of things do actually cause harm to trans people. So if you're looking at it at a trans lens and to say, what are we doing? We need to combat that stuff and come together to combat that stuff.
Combating that stuff does not include banning trans women from the bathroom. It does not include saying that trans women in female bathrooms are a safety concern. That's not how we combat this. I'll say it right now. I know you want this soundbite. I know you don't think that liberals could ever admit this, but going into the bathroom with a boner is weird. Going into the bathroom for sexual reasons is weird. Like, period. That's it. That's just the end of it. Like,
yeah, I think I see a lot of different points from everybody here. Honestly, like, I can understand like how some women may feel unsafe with men in the restroom. Men. When I say men, I mean men. I'm not talking about trans women. So being a non-binary person that sometimes has the choice to either go into a men's restroom looking like this. You can look at me.
It's just interesting that I thought this was a trans debate. That's what I thought.
Non-binary people
fall
under
under the trans umbrella.
No, they don't.
Yeah. So I don't know. Maybe you could educate yourself a little bit on that.
I think I
and
could
maybe
educate
then you would figure out.
I think I could educate you.
What the reality is.
I'm
and what
sure there's
trans
a
actually means.
non-binary Jubilee episode.
Well, because it's not a debate about who is really trans and who is not.
It can be.
We're talking about restrooms. We're talking about
But
restrooms.
who's trans
We're
plays
talking
into that,
about
right?
restrooms.
the amount of comments that I got on my last video about this part was crazy. They said non-binary is not trans. They switched this part around. It was so manipulative, blah, 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 blah. Even the comment from Blair herself said that I was wrong for saying that she said that non-binary people don't belong, which I mean, I guess you got me there, Blair. You didn't say you don't belong. You just said, I thought this was a trans debate. Firstly, I do want to say that it is fair. It is correct to say that being non-binary is a much, much different experience than being a binary trans person. But I cannot sit here and pretend that this was like this great moment for Blair. This is just mean. This is just immature, mean. This person was invited by Jubilee to the panel. Clearly, both Jubilee and that person themselves view them as trans. Non-binary people don't always identify as trans, but some do, and do deal with the same mental health condition that binary trans people do, gender dysphoria. Even Alex themselves later in the video said that they plan to have facial feminization surgery, which is the same surgery that Blair herself had. So no, they're not the same experience, but in my opinion, they have enough in common with me, with my experience, with my situation, with my trans friends' experiences, that I have no problem with allowing them to help me progress the trans community and to fight this fight alongside us. We don't have to be exactly the same, but this behavior of literally like turning your nose up to somebody before telling them you don't belong here is just messed up. Like, it's just, there's no need for it.
So anyways, I was saying, as a trans non-binary person, When I go into a place that only has men's and women's restrooms, and I'm dressed like this, my choice to go into the men's restroom at that point puts me in danger, okay, in general. So to ban transgender people from going to the restroom seems a little ridiculous to me.
Said that.
Yeah, but
You came out in support of the prompt that trans women in a female bathroom is a safety concern. Like, it just doesn't make any sense. I didn't say that we should ban them, just that it's extremely dangerous for them to be there. It's not like this is some hypothetical situation. This is already happening. Blair knows that people aren't being allowed into the restroom that aligns with their gender identity. And yet she came out in support of this prompt and is now saying, well, I don't think we should ban them all, no.
6 years ago, it was never an issue for me to use the women's room. Girls would literally drag me in there with them and say, girl, you need to be in our bathroom. And I was like, I felt uncomfortable back then. I don't pass. I know I don't pass, so that's a me problem. And I'm not gonna turn my fear of being attacked in the men's room into a woman's problem. It's still a me problem, so I need to work on myself. And it sucks. Does it suck? Yes, it sucks. Some trans people aren't capable of handling themselves against a man, but I am confident in my ability to do that. Not everybody can, I get that. But it's just now, 6 years ago, I used to use the women's room. Now I don't, because women have spoke out. They've come out and said, we're not comfortable. There's too many self-ID'd people out there just taking advantage. And I choose to use the men's room to protect them.
It is so backwards that these people are sitting here saying that, oh, well, we didn't have any problems 6 years ago, and then blaming all the problems that we now do have on random self-ID people or non-binary people instead of the anti-trans activists. Trans people have been self-IDing their ways into bathrooms for decades. There was never this craze of trans people attacking women in women's bathrooms, blah, blah, blah. That was never a narrative until these anti-trans politicians and extremists and activists started disseminating these narratives. That's what they are, narratives. They're not reality. People are on high alert now, not because of the increased threat of trans people, but because of their increased anxiety around trans people triggered by anti-trans activists.
I just want to say, like, there is something that I think we can do. There's solutions to this. Like, I do think that something like you have to be on hormones or something like that for 2 years or something before you can even change your ID, like across the board. That would eliminate the cross-dressers from being able to go there, because then you can say, hey, my ID says this, and you can, and so it shows that you've actually taken steps. It's not about passability, it's about how long you've actually been taking the steps to transition.
Girl, 2 years? 2 years? Babe, I was fully transitioned 1 year in. You want me to go to a men's room? I don't think I'd ever support requiring an ID to enter a public restroom. Just personally, I don't think that we should waste the resources on that. But even if we were, I don't think a requirement of how long you should be on hormones should determine if you can access an ID. That's not reasonable. You could enforce a policy that says you can change it now, but once you change it, you have to wait 2 years to change it again. Therefore, it eliminates people, just changing their ID to go into a public space. But the waiting period to access an ID is ridiculous. Like, a lot of trans people can pass pretty quickly, right? Not only would a marker based on their biological sex be incorrect, it would become an inaccurate tool for identification. It's not even an ID at that point. Additionally, it could literally cause somebody to be hate crimed. A couple weeks ago, a customer in a store was attacked, beaten, and called a transvestite by the store owner or the cashier or whatever, and she wasn't even trans. Now imagine that situation, but what if the cashier didn't realize that she was trans until he looked at her ID? What if that was what outed her and caused her attack? Because when I first transitioned, it was harder to get that ID, and that happened to me. I was not hate crime, thank God, but it did out me consistently. Like, these are real life-threatening consequences for these propositions that you're making. It's giving, you're trans, prove it. Deal with all these obstacles and prove it. Like, wouldn't it just be easier to focus on protecting women from the real problem? Unsafe bathrooms, a justice system that a lot of times doesn't offer justice to women that are assaulted in these bathrooms. Like, get your priorities straight. Let's get on to the next prompt. It's too much for me.
Non-binary should not be considered under the trans umbrella. Agreeers?
Let's go, though. This is evil.
I think that
Did you hear that? Don't miss that part. She goes, this is evil, and yet still walks out proudly with a smile on her face and sits down, ready to tell non-binary people that they are not allowed under the trans umbrella. Like I said earlier, it's an umbrella term for a reason. It's meant to encompass a wide array of things that are not exactly the same, but have things in common. Right? My opinion is I do think that we have enough in common that if a non-binary person wants to identify as trans, I have no problem with that. I support it, okay? I support it, and I'll tell you why. My solidarity with the non-binary community costs me nothing. I have no problem pointing out our differences, but it's a respect thing, right? If someone says they're trans, they're trans. But to be fair, this is the prompt. You know what I mean? Like, the prompt was asked. They were given the space to say that non-binary people should not be under the trans umbrella. I think that that's messed up on Jubilee's part. They should not have invited a non-binary panelist to sit across from Blair White and these other panelists who believe that they are not really trans and ask this question. Like, that is just so mean. Let's get one non-binary person and put in a whole prompt about them and then have half the panel think that they shouldn't be there. That is not cute. Not cute. Keep it cute, Jubilee.
Concept of a transgender umbrella is inherently an issue, right? Because when you're talking about something as nuanced, complex, full of social dynamics, medical dynamics, so many things to be considered. When you're talking about a transsexual, you should really be specific, right? And this entire concept actually of transgender is relatively new. Like, it came about in the 70s or 80s through queer theory, when originally it was about transsexuals, which was considered a medical diagnosis, which was a medical process, and it defined something very specific. So for me, when I hear that non-binary, which, if I'm to understand correctly, means
I think
that
androgynous.
Right, and it means you identify somewhere in between male and female. That's not what a transsexual is.
Yeah, they just don't want to be associated with non-binary people. I don't think it's because there's legitimate differences. I think it's just because they think that non-binary people make the trans community or like transsexuals look bad. But just to be real, the definition of trans is not identifying with the gender you were assigned at birth. Non-binary people do not identify as the gender they were assigned at birth. It's really that simple. If you want to talk about specific things that affect only transsexual people, that's fine. You're allowed to be as specific as you want. Nobody is denying you the right to be as specific as you want and to point out the differences between you as a transsexual and non-binary people. Nobody is arguing with you on that. As far as her implying that, being non-binary is real because, the term transgender used to be transsexual and it only referred to the medical process, I don't buy all that. The word transgender is a new word for sure, but the fact that the word is new and the terminology has changed does not mean that non-binary people are new. Does not mean that non-binary people have not existed for centuries. Does not mean that non-binary people are not as legitimate as transsexual as binary transsexuals. Technically, the non-medical trans people are the OGs, and they're not kicking us out of the community. Like, expanding the term transsexual to encompass more identities, to me, is the same thing as expanding the gay and lesbian community to include bisexual people. More was learned about the identities of people struggling with the same things, and a new term was added.
The definition of a trans person is somebody whose body has been altered, or somebody who identifies as a different gender whose body has been altered via
Right.
hormones or surgery.
And there's two genders, so if you want to say...
Actually, sir, that's just not the definition. I'm so sorry. That is wrong. By the way, Google has a sale right now. They are free. Being transgender means that your gender identity does not align with the sex you were assigned at birth. It has nothing to do with the amount of transition you have completed. Nothing. I was just as transgender the day before I transitioned as the day after, as 10 years after. I would even say that I was trans when I was born, when I was a little kid, even if I didn't know it yet. So to legitimize somebody's transness only by the medical procedures that they've had done is not right. And also would delegitimize a lot of binary transsexuals' trans identity, not just non-binary people. The comment about non-binary being the same as androgynous, I'm getting tired of this. Y'all, I can't fucking be an English teacher anymore. I can't teach everyone how to form a proper analogy. I'm exhausted. That's literally the equivalent of saying being a trans person is the same thing as being a full-time cross-dresser. And let me explain. I feel like a lot of people confuse non-binary, which is an identity just like being trans. They confuse that with being gender non-conforming, which is the way that you express your gender, right? Unlike non-binary people, people who are gender non-conforming are typically fine with identifying with their sex assigned at birth. They just maybe are a guy that likes to wear nail polish, or a guy that maybe likes to experiment with dresses and stuff like that. That's just how they choose to express themselves. That has nothing to say about their identity, right? Like being a binary transsexual, being a non-binary person is who you are. It is not determined by what you're wearing that day, what you're not wearing that day, what kind of makeup you have on. It's who you are. The same way that being a woman is not defined by wearing dresses and wearing makeup.
And my concern is there's so much, clearly, as we see today, really heated conversations about trans people that when you start adding in queer theory, non-binary, it just makes it muddy, and the people at home, don't know what the fuck you're talking about.
Here's the thing.
Okay, I mean, that's not wrong to say that it makes it more confusing. That's true. But non-binary people and trans people in the community should not have to censor ourselves, censor our identities to make it more palatable for other people, right? Everybody deserves to be themselves in the most authentic way and to access the care that they want and that they need. If allowing non-binary people to exist under the trans umbrella means that they can access the care that I have fought for myself for so long, then I would love to have them under the umbrella with me. I would love to give somebody else the opportunity to feel the euphoria that I feel with my gender with their own.
People who identify as non-binary, so to speak, when they do so, they typically don't medically transition.
Right.
And when you do so, that at that point, it's a costume.
Well,
Like-
it's gender nonconformity, right? And so we
Oh my God, this is so messed up. A non-binary identity, like I just said, is not defined by the clothes that you wear, your aesthetic, your haircut, any of that. It's an identity, it's inside. Additionally, a lot of non-binary people do medically transition, so that's just not correct. That's simply not correct. Even the one non-binary person on the panel said that they're getting FFS.
Because they can
Blair's
take
saying.
this off. I can't take this off.
Yeah, as Blair's saying, we look at gender nonconformity, which used to be okay. You can wear what you want. You can present however you want, but it doesn't make you something different. You can't, as Blair was saying, it comes out of queer theory, which is postmodern neo-Marxism, which means that there's no such thing as absolute truth. They don't believe there's truth, so it kind of erodes the structure of society. And it's actually really regressive in a lot of ways because you end up getting it to where it's literally based off of stereotypes, which we've tried to for so long get rid of. Like, it's okay to be gender nonconforming male or gender nonconforming female, and that didn't make you non-binary.
No. Being non-binary is not sexist, does not reinforce stereotypes or anything like that. This is, again, just a lack of understanding or a complete denial of the difference between people who are non-binary and non-binary identity and people who simply choose to not conform to gender roles, to gender expectations. But just to be clear for everybody watching, the inclusion of non-gender conforming people is typically a liberal perspective. But here it is, once again, being postured as conservative.
It didn't make you trans. And so a lot of times what we're seeing happen right now is a lot of the issues we're seeing, again, coming against trans people, all the violence and stuff like that, most of those people in those issues or in those situations are not necessarily trans. They are self-IDing into a trans category to cause issues under the name of queer theory, under the name of Marxism, in order to destabilize society, in order to usher in this political movement. And so when they do that, then it'll usher in the political movement and
Let me take it. My whole thing is, just one last thing I would say is,
This part is so good. This is why I wanted to include the extended cut because that was amazing. She goes, the people committing these crimes are self-IDing males. First of all, if we're being honest, several of these conservative panelists are self-IDing trans people. They're self-IDing trans people. They're the ones that they're creating this mascot out of. They talk about in this debate how they went into a doctor's office and within 1 hour were prescribed hormone replacement therapy. That is self-IDing. That is self-IDing. You self-ID. You are the problem. It's you. Hi, you're the problem. It's you. They're causing issues in the name of queer theory and Marxism. Why would they do such a thing? Well, she's going to explain. In order to destabilize society, dramatic. In order to usher in a political movement, so then, and nothing. Nothing. And then nothing. They usher in a whole political movement, commit all these crimes in order to do this massive, evil, diabolical plan that she can't remember. Oops. This is all just a bunch of groundless claims and scary phrases that have been carefully constructed by conservatives. But unfortunately, it seems like Sarah has forgotten her line. It's so telling that she could not even finish her claim, not even finish the diabolical plan that non-binary people are trying to fulfill. If it was so detrimental to society to include non-binary people, to allow non-binary people to live their fucking lives, wouldn't you be able to have that at the top of your mind? Just kind of wing it, Because it's such a big problem, right? It's a huge, massive problem, and yet you can't even think of it. You have to play back the script through your mind. They're ushering in a political movement to destabilize society in order to... What? Do you hear yourself? Like, huh? Non-binary people are just trying to exist. They're just trying to find a community that accepts them and understands them and at least attempts to sympathize with their experience. It is insane to blame non-binary people and self-IDing males, which you are, allegedly. I don't know her medical history, but I'm pretty sure she's one of the ones that said that she walked in and got hormones within an hour. That's self-IDing. Blaming them for the bigotry that the trans community faces instead of the bigots is wild. It's wild. It's wild. Listen, maybe you really just don't want people to associate you with them. You can say that you hate them. You can say all this kind of stuff, but to imply that they have this deep-rooted evil plan for society, you sound insane. Insane.
When I talk to or I'm around a non-binary person, it doesn't really, click. It doesn't connect because it is so different. So I think that's inherently, I should be able to see some semblance of my own issue within that person, and I don't when they're non-binary at all.
And so I have no issue with non-binary people. I just don't think that we're the same.
Yeah,
and
same.
so when like I was
The not clicking, that's a you problem, girl. That's something with you. I can and I do relate to non-binary individuals all the time. Again, we're not the same, not at all, but we have dealt with very similar, if not the same, gender struggles. We also probably face the same rejection of our gender identities, but at the end of the day, again, it doesn't matter because my solidarity costs me nothing. It's just so dumb to be so demanding that they are not allowed under the trans umbrella. It does not hurt you. It does not hurt you. This is like a gay person fighting for acceptance by joining forces with the straight people to mock bisexual people. For example, a gay person might say to a straight person, no, I'm just like you. My sexual orientation is just flipped in my brain. That's it. But those bisexual people, have you heard of them? They can't make up their mind. You can't be between sexualities, like just pick one. This would form a bond between gay people and straight people, right? But it's at the expense of bisexual people. Is it really a victory for your community if it's at the expense of another community? Especially another community who has dealt with the very same prejudice and discrimination and lack of access to healthcare and resources as you? Is it really worth it? Because let's be clear, that's what these trans conservatives are doing. They're throwing non-binary people under the bus in order to appeal to straight people, to cis people. They are bargaining for their own acceptance with the acceptance of the non-binary community. To each their own, their own vehicles and devices in which they try to accomplish their goals, but this technique is never looked at fondly in retrospect. When branches of the feminist movement abandoned lesbians and referred to them as the Lavender Menace, we heard very similar talking points. Betty Friedan asserted that they threatened to taint the reputation of the feminist movement, driving women away out of fear of association and diverting attention from more important campaigns for women's equality. And like as great as Betty Friedan was, as much as she did do, many feminists now claim that the movement outgrew her because she was unwilling to fight for women who were not white, straight, cis, and rich. Rich. I hope that these conservatives would recognize that blaming lesbians for the misogyny of society doesn't make sense. Like, I just want to really urge people to really consider what the threat actually is here, okay? Who is actually harming the trans community? Where should we really be focusing our resources? Like this Jubilee video that has millions of views. Really? You want to focus on non-binary people, not the people making laws that take away healthcare?
When it first started really coming out, I did not agree with it. I was like, what is this? This is stupid. How can you be a them? Blah, 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 blah.
You were
and
correct.
I did the whole thing, the grammatically... You're interrupting me.
But you were correct. I'm just saying. I'm agreeing with
They
you.
asked you not to comment, and you're commenting. So if you could stop, that would be great.
Well,
Thank you. So anyway, as I was saying, so I changed my mind because I got to spend time around other people who were non-binary, who were non-conforming. And it's funny that that some people keep talking about, oh, you need to go through HRT, you need to have surgeries in order to be trans. That is all garbage.
Another thing I never said, it's just so crazy.
Again, you're still interrupting me while I'm talking. This is the second time now.
You're addressing me.
This is the second time now.
If you can claim someone said something they didn't say, they should be able to correct you in the moment.
Do you feel good now that you said what you needed to say?
I feel fine.
Me
I mean,
back
you're
because-
appropriating a medical condition. That's what you're really doing, right?
That is
Because
your,
there are
again,
people
here you
sitting
go.
here-
Interruption
You are,
number
though.
3.
Well, you sat someone with cancer with someone who is saying they have cancer when they don't. That's kind of what it is.
But that's
right?
how you see
That's
it.
what it
And
is.
you actually don't
And
know
I'm
my
here to
life.
say how I
You
see
don't
it.
know my
I'm here to
life.
say how I see it.
That's the thing is that you don't
I'm
know.
here to say how I see
I don't
it. My point is, you're different than me, and I don't even think you deny that, but yet when I say it, it's an issue, right? The same way that he said he can't take that off, you can, right? It's different. At the very least, it's different. And when we have a community that there are so many categories, demi-girl, demi-boy, astrosexual, all this shit, but y'all can't fathom that maybe that would be a different category than what I am when we have such different, as you keep saying, and everyone keeps saying, experiences?
Listen, you can't appropriate something by being who you are. You know what I mean? That's the same thing as Candace Owens saying that trans women are appropriating womanhood, right? Woman face, ever heard of that? Especially coming from a trans person whose identity's medical legitimacy is ruthlessly questioned and interrogated. These conservatives should really understand that we do not accept people based off of the medical legitimacy of their identity. We accept them because they're people. We accept them because they're here, especially when the conservatives couldn't come up with one good reason to not support and accept them under the trans umbrella, besides we're different, which honestly, I personally really don't think that we're that different.
I just actually want to ask you a question. What is your dysphoria, though? Because gender dysphoria, or sex dysphoria, as I would rather call it, is an uncomfortability between my secondary sex characteristics, not just what I wear on a daily basis, because masculinity and femininity doesn't have anything to do with being trans.
Imagine if somebody in a panel that was going to be seen by millions of people asked you about your dysphoria. Imagine this. Imagine this is happening. How do you feel about your dick? You're gonna shave that brow bone, girl? What is wrong with these people? Oh my God. I really don't understand how they're not recognizing their hypocrisy. Like, I hate to be rude, but if you took off your makeup, I'm not gonna go there. I'm not gonna go there. What I will say is the way that you look is not indicative of how real your trans identity is. The same applies to non-binary people. Even if they look like your typical guy, your typical girl, if their identity is non-binary, they're non-binary. Secondly, gender dysphoria is not defined by a discomfort between only your sex parts, only your genitals. That's not dysphoria. All trans people's dysphoria is different. Some trans people have just social dysphoria. Some people have dysphoria about just their face. Some people have dysphoria about just their lower half. A lot of trans women choose to not have bottom surgery. Are they not trans because they didn't have enough distress about their penis? And again, non-binary people do experience dysphoria about their sex parts. They do. Alex literally said they're having FFS. And honestly, that FFS is going to put them farther in their transition than a lot of the other binary trans people on the panel. Now, saying that masculinity and femininity have nothing to do with being trans, I do agree with that. I do. You can be the most feminine guy in the world, but still identify as a guy and like have no problem with the sex you were assigned at birth.
But that's not true. But that is not true. You can have dysphoria without having to be dysphoric about your sex parts.
But what is your
You can have
dysphoria? What
dysphoria
is
about
your
anything.
dysphoria?
Straight cis women have dysphoria about their breasts all the time. They get breast augmentation.
It's not dysphoria.
That doesn't mean.
I will disagree with Alex about them saying that straight women who, get breast augmentations, that's a form of dysphoria. I don't agree with that. However, I would argue that some cis people can face dysphoria. If a woman is born with PCOS and she gets facial hair on her face, she may feel dysphoria because her facial hair is not something that is typically seen on females. The same thing with a guy that may have like gynecomastia. Is that what it's called? Gynecomastia? They may feel dysphoria about their chest because there's breast tissue there, and males typically don't have breast tissue.
The prompt was, is it different? And it is.
I was talking about my experience with non-binary people.
That's not the prompt. Correction, that is not the prompt. It's should non-binary people be considered under the trans umbrella? That's the prompt.
Again, when I go out, I can't like take my beard off, girl. It's not coming off.
Right.
Unfortunately, as much as I hate having facial hair despite being a guy,
I think he's trying to say that because the changes he made are more permanent, then his identity is more real. But again, non-binary people do sometimes medically transition. So it's like,
Doctors are manipulating trans medical care. Agreeers?
yeah. Honestly, with this one, I do agree. I do. I mean, we all know Big Pharma is fucked. Our for-profit healthcare system is the real culprit here. But I mean, I do agree with the prompt. There are definitely doctors and surgeons out there jumping on the, gender affirmation train because they see that there's more of a demand for it now. And they are, in my opinion, not taking the proper precautions or going through the proper training to be doing the procedures that they're doing. With bottom surgery, with vaginoplasties, I've heard of surgeons like watching another surgeon do it a couple times and then like trying, like going for it on a person. I'm not in the medical field. I don't know how these things go, how much training you're supposed to have, but I feel like you should have more. I feel like it's complex enough surgery that you should have a little more. You know what I mean? Even when I was going for my facial feminization surgery, I met with several surgeons who immediately upon meeting them, it was clear to me that they were just in it for the money, that they did not care about me. They just did not care. They were dismissive of me. They rushed me through the appointments. And they like, it was just so clear, One of the surgeons that I literally was about to do a cranioplasty with, which is when they cut out a piece of your skull, take it off your face, resculpt it, and then screw it back in. He was going to do that without taking a CT scan to look at my bone structure. He was going to cut into my skull without taking a CT scan of it first. What? Mind you, there is typically a large sinus behind the piece that he was going to remove. I don't have that sinus on one side of my face. So if I had gone with this surgeon who did not care about me, who did not care to do a CT scan before operating on my skull, he would have been digging into my skull with a chisel, looking for a pocket that does not exist. So yes, there are definitely doctors that are manipulating desperate trans patients to make money. It is awful. It is so sad. That being said, I want to be extremely, extremely clear that I do not think this says anything about the legitimacy or efficacy of gender affirming care as a whole. The data shows that gender affirming care is extremely successful at lowering rates of suicidality, depression, anxiety, and increasing overall quality of life. So when we talk about these things, we really need to be careful because of the amount of laws that have already banned this gender affirming care. The medicine itself is not the problem. The doctors not following the proper protocol to diagnose patients before they give them medicine is the problem.
I don't know if it's incompetence or ineptitude or laziness, because what we're seeing, not just in the trans community, we're seeing in society, SSRIs being pushed on patients. Mental health doctors are pushing so many different drugs without getting to the root issues. And so we see, that's one of the main reasons why we see a high level of autism being prescribed hormones, is because they're like, oh, you present this way, we're gonna throw pills at it. You have anxiety, we're gonna throw SSRIs at it.
Okay, finally, I agree with Sarah. I do agree. I am definitely pro-medicine. I'm pro-SSRIs, all that kind of stuff. And I do think that adults should have access to medication when they want it. But with minors being prescribed hormones and even SSRIs, the proper diagnostic process needs to happen. And I don't think that it's always happening.
I've been on testosterone since I was 15 years old. And even looking into it, I waltzed my little ass up into that doctor's office and I left on testosterone. He gave me my first shot in the doctor's office that day.
Oh my gosh.
I was 15 years old. What if I had been wrong? What if I had been wrong? It really just is that simple.
As a minor, it should not be that easy. When I went to my gender therapist, I had to do 12 hour-long sessions and do a complete deep dive into my history of my gender, the comorbidities that I deal with. I had to look at all that. I had to trace my gender dysphoria back to like my childhood. I was 17 years old when I started. My mom was, really like nervous about transition. So she took me to the best gender specialist, the best gender therapist that she could find. I'm very, very grateful for this. I'm very fortunate to have been able to do this because, it was expensive. It's not accessible to everybody, but I do think it was very, very beneficial. And I do think that process should be mandatory for minors. My therapist was extremely old school, as you could say, when it came to gender dysphoria. And at the time, I hated it because I was like, I know I'm trans. I know what I'm going through. Just give me what I need. Give me my hormones, like prescribe them to me. But she would not. And in retrospect, I understand why she didn't. And I'm grateful that she did not because I wouldn't have wanted to be wrong either. Even as an adult, I would highly recommend doing this process, doing this deep evaluation because, first of all, it just helps with any other traumas that you've been through and like the trauma of just being a closeted trans person. But it's also it's just a good thing to do. I don't know. I just personally really recommend it. But I understand that not everybody has that ability. Not everybody has that opportunity or the money or the time to go and spend 12 hours with a therapist. Like it's just not feasible for some people. And for that reason, I do support self-ID as an adult as an adult. As long as adults are getting all the information, all the risks and pros and cons of that medication, I believe that they should be allowed to make an informed decision. But with minors, it's just not the same. And I have to clarify that being 15 years old, walking into your doctor's appointment and getting testosterone that same day is not the proper medical protocol. It is impossible to fully, deeply evaluate a minor, a 15-year-old, in 1 hour, in one session. It's just not, you can't do it.
I think that society in general, as Sarah mentioned, is over-medicalized right now. We're in this weird climate where there are entire political movements behind if you do or you don't have a vaccine. You can't enter this building if you do. You can if you do. You know, it's like crazy. That's the first thing. You know, children, you know, exhibiting normal childlike behavior, and then suddenly they're on Adderall, right? But, you know, when it comes to the trans issue, I think just the fact that there were really almost no detransitioners as recent as like 5-6 years ago. And the fact that it's exploded now shows that it is a massive issue. And, you know, I think that I can reflect what you said. I was over 18 when I started my hormones, but I had a 20-minute appointment, and just like you, I walked in and out with an estrogen prescription. Insane. I wasn't tested
I didn't
for my
have to see a
levels.
therapist first.
No.
I had no letter.
And you were a child.
I mean, you were an adult. You were an adult, right? I don't know. I think that adults should be able to make their own informed decisions. But like I said, I do think that going through the process is recommended. But again, some people it's just not feasible for them. And so we can't write laws or, you know, limit healthcare for these people that just simply won't be able to access it if we do.
What is an issue is when doctors are not giving all the information, when they're actually telling you that this is what's right for you, and then it's not. They're actually manipulating their patients. They're manipulating, you know, they say if you don't do this, you're gonna kill yourself, and all this stuff. So I would actually rather a doctor say, I have no idea what this is gonna do to you, but it's your body, your choice, you can do what you want, and then leave you on your way and you can make that decision.
Doctors are telling patients they're gonna kill themselves? Yeah. Who's doing that? Let me at them. No, I'm just kidding. No therapist or medical professional should say that. None. No. And I do have to call bullshit on it because I don't think that that's real. I don't think that's happening. But if it is, fucking stop.
They also don't tell trans men that they're going to go through menopause.
Right. There's a lot of issues with trans men. Buck Angel talks about that.
This is such like a detransitioner, gender critical talking point that trans men will go through menopause. That's not true. They say, look what happened to this beautiful, young, minor female body. I'm like, girl, slow down. First of all, you're weird. No, I'm just kidding. Detrans girls, so people who were female, born female, transitioned to men and then detransitioned. Sometimes they'll say, well, my hair thinned and my skin got acne, I got more oily. Welcome to testosterone. I don't know what you expected. But the second one, that trans men will go through menopause, it's just not true. It's not true. When a woman goes through menopause, her estrogen levels drop. But what's not happening to those women that go through menopause is they're not injecting male amounts of testosterone into their bodies. You're not losing all of your hormones like people going through menopause. You're replacing your hormones with testosterone. So that is a factually incorrect statement being used to fearmonger about the trans medicine that he used.
I do feel like the system is like pretty broken and there's not enough education in the medical system for doctors to be prescribing all the things that they do, again, discussing SSRIs. I empathize for those stories. I understand that that does happen. I'm not negating that. But I think to negate, you know, medical service to somebody who needs it, who it might be life or death for, just because you feel some type of way about it, isn't right. Like, why do you care what, you know, little Timothy or Sally are doing or whatever? Like, why do you personally care what?
Well, Timothy and
they're
Sally
children,
are 8 and 12.
so.
Yeah, no, the why do you care about children is not a good argument. I do think that kids obviously should be protected from harm, which is why we have the medical protocols that we have and why we need to enforce them really well. Because the kids that do need this medicine need to be able to access it. Banning it completely and not allowing those extreme cases to access the medicine that they need is going to end lives. If you really care about the kids, allow them to access the medicine that they need.
We just don't know because the studies aren't there, like you said, right? So the problem is when you talk about like the detransition rate, what generally happens is there's no follow-up. The longest study that's been done is 5 years out. The average.
So she's going to go on to say that the detransitioner rate is underreported, underestimated. It doesn't matter. It really doesn't. If we are enforcing the proper medical protocol, the amount of detransitioners will be minimized. I would love if we could get it down to 0, but personally, I don't think that's possible. I just think that, as humans, some people make mistakes. Some people just, it just happens. And I think that that is a pretty standard thing. I don't think it's ever been completely 0, right? I also agree with Sarah that, the medicine that we have now and the studies that we have now are all relatively new. I do personally truly believe that there are good doctors out there providing the most well-informed medicine that they can. Even then, medicine as a whole, in general, is experimentative, Operations and techniques change and improve, and new medications are developed or medications are revised. Are all the people who were treated with the last version of medication guinea pigs because we've learned more? No, they were provided the best medical care that was available. They told me personally in my appointment to get hormone replacement therapy that the studies on it aren't great. But what they did tell me is that other people have used this medication, not only trans people, but cisgender people, and they've been fine. I was also told that people have been using these medications for their whole lives and that hasn't caused them problems. But I was also informed that it does come with risks. But to me, all of the risks and potential cons were worth it. I needed HRT to live a happy and healthy life. There was no other option. You could say, well, you could have just not transitioned. No, I couldn't have. I could not.
Some things that were brought up about detransitioners, which I found just a little bit ironic, right? Because for a community that is 1% or less of the general population, we can never seem to find it within ourselves to find empathy for it, even if it is the 1% of our community, which is detransitioners, and for the horrific medical malpractice, abuse, mental and spiritual turmoil they go through. It's like, so we want the rest of the world to say this 1% matters, but our 1% doesn't matter. That's the first thing.
Nobody said they don't matter. Nobody said they don't matter. Detransitioners, and I've said this before on my channel many times, need access to the specialized care that they need. Need care that they need, duh. And I do have a lot of empathy for detransitioners because I've had my own medical trauma, and it's hard. It's really, really hard. The only point of contention that I do have is when these stories of medical malpractice or medical negligence are used against the trans community as a whole and against gender affirming care as a whole. It was a bad doctor, not bad medicine.
Second thing is, it's not as if they detransition because of, just like you said, the loosening of all the restrictions to get on these drugs. It's like, that's not a good thing. Gatekeeping is a good thing. Like making sure the right people are getting on these drugs so there aren't regret cases, there aren't botched cases. That's what we have to go towards, because right now we're going down the slippery slope of anyone can get on it. Every single person here, I'm pretty sure, just stated that they went in and walked out in an hour or less to get their hormones. And that's a huge problem, especially a child.
Because of things.
Saying that gatekeeping is a good thing is crazy. That's crazy. But I mean, I do agree. I do agree. I have to say it. I'm so sorry. Except if you're an adult. If you're an adult, as long as you are properly, fully informed of the pros and cons of the medication, I think that you should be allowed to make your own decision. But as a minor, you need to go through the medical process, okay?
I think I had the common ground though, because everybody here kind of also admitted that we don't have the research. Correct. And so when we don't have the research, and I'll tell you, I think that adults can do what they want, but I think we don't push forward with transitioning children until we have the research. We do the research.
How do you expect the medical community to gain access to research if we're just preventing these folks to actually go through any of the processes?
You have that select gatekeeping, and you need a good checklist to be like, these people show all the actual signs of gender dysphoria. They are having very strong distress, and in every state that's passed bans on access for minors also has provisions, except for in the most extreme cases, to conduct studies on.
She says we should not be prescribing gender affirming care to children except in the most extreme cases. I'm fucking sorry. Is that not what we've been saying this whole time? Is that not what we've been saying? You think we just want to throw hormones at everybody who wakes up one day and says they're trans? No. We want children to have to go through the medical process, or at least I do. I don't know about everybody else, but I personally do, and I think that most people personally do, to determine if they are one of these extreme cases. I don't think the suicide card should be played, but for some cases, this is life and death. There needs to be room for these extreme cases, and there needs to be room for parents, doctors, and that trans person to have the discretion to make these choices. We cannot make a law about it. There is no reason to ban gender affirming care. It's redundant and will, you can bet your bottom dollar, be used to gatekeep against trans people who actually legitimately will harm themselves without this care. We need to allow doctors and parents and the trans person themselves to make informed decisions about the care that they receive, not laws.
And we have a community that is trying to remove the idea that gender dysphoria is a qualifier for being trans at all. That's a very popular talking point. In fact, they've made up slurs for people who believe that gender dysphoria has anything to do with being trans. So
I don't even know what she's talking about. Like, people argue over the semantics of it for sure, like gender dysphoria versus gender euphoria, but I don't know. I think the main takeaway should be that trans itself, being trans itself, is not the mental disorder. The gender dysphoria is the mental disorder, the mental condition. You know what I mean?
But I just don't understand this obsession over controlling and policing people's body, their
so
decisions.
kids can do heroin? Because you don't want to
I'm
police
talking
them?
about HRT. This is something.
Right.
This is.
Not the comparing gender affirming care, which is evidence-based, supported by every single major medical organization in the country, to heroin. You can and you should call out medical malpractice when the protocol for trans minors is not followed. I support that. But these trans conservatives sound so hypocritical to compare the same medicine that they currently take to heroin. Like, this is plain out selling your soul to the devil. Or maybe I should say it's plain out selling the soul of trans kids and their parents and doctors who want the best for them to conservatives.
Gender affirming transition is suicide prevention. Agreeers?
Yeah, so a couple things. Very specific prompts, right? Gender affirming transition, not gender affirming care, not gender affirming surgery, gender affirming transition, meaning anything from a full medical transition to a social transition. Yes, in a lot of ways, transition is suicide prevention. Most trans people, both online and in person that I've met, do not see themselves continuing to live if they cannot be who they are, if they could not transition. That's the reality. There's even statistics that show that supporting somebody's transition and being there for them, even if you're the only one that's there for them in their entire life, dramatically decreases the probability of them committing or attempting suicide.
I appreciate everything that gender affirming care has done for me. And I thank God every day that this was the right decision for me, because I have friends like Richie who it wasn't the right decision for, and now he's missing genitals. So, you know, when it comes to it being life-saving, the reason I didn't step forward, you know, even as somebody who might agree with that prompt, is because correlation is not causation.
The silence.
What do you mean by that?
Just because something is related to another thing does not mean it directly causes it.
No, we know the phrase, babe. We know what the phrase means. But what do you mean though? I don't understand. I'm not following you.
Okay.
Okay, so there's a little thing called a self-fulfilling prophecy, right? And sometimes when we create a narrative, it can kind of take on a life of its own. So I know there's a lot of talk about suicide statistics in the trans community. And interestingly, almost all of those statistics come out of LGBT activist organizations who have an incentive to put those numbers out to portray this image that we are suffering greatly, we're under attack, and then all of those suicide rates are due to societal mistreatment. So first of all, I think even the conservatives that just blindly believe that half of all trans people are killing themselves, I know at least a few hundred trans people over the years. I've never met one that's killed themselves. You would think I'd meet one if this was half, right? That's just an anecdote, but make of it what you will. And when these kids are being told, like you said, when they're going into these doctors, the doctors are telling their parents essentially emotional blackmail. They're saying,
Literally 5 minutes ago, if that, she was saying, I suffered my whole life as a 5-year-old and I suffered so much with my gender dysphoria, blah, blah, blah. And now she's saying they want us to believe that the trans community is suffering greatly and that no trans people, or at least no trans people that she knows, have even killed themselves. Oh my God. How detached do you have to be to say some shit like this? I have had trans friends that have killed themselves. I've had multiple trans friends who have attempted suicide because of societal mistreatment. And as somebody who 5 minutes ago said that we should protect the detrans community, even if they're only a small percentage of the trans community, for you to completely dismiss people killing themselves because it's not actually 47%, it's only 36%. It's only 25%. Are you kidding? It's actually 36, not 47%. Like, oh, so the 5% of the detrans community matters, but the 35% of trans people that have attempted suicide, that's not important. My God, conservatives have fucking terminal brain rot, I swear. Blair, maybe the only reason that you don't know any trans people who have attempted suicide is because the only ones you approve of and associate with are the ones who have access to medical care and who could transition. Like, there's this little thing called selective exposure bias.
Trans your kid or your kid's gonna die. And they say it in front of the child, and they set up this false dichotomy as if those are the only two options moving forward. And here to tell any child feeling any type of way, those are not your only two options. In fact, there is a vast array of options in between and around suicide and transition. And
thank you, fucking Mother Teresa. Okay, let's move on to the next prompt because I'm literally gonna lose my shit.
It's okay for minors to get top surgery. Agreeers?
Really?
You guys waited on that?
That's pretty vile.
So to me, this is another situation where we really need to trust that parents, doctors, and the trans person themselves are going to be making the best, most informed decision that they can, while also simultaneously enforcing that medical protocol to ensure that a real, proper, accurate diagnosis is made, and that, this is reserved for those extremely rare cases. When it comes to 12-year-olds or 13-year-olds or even 14-year-olds, that's really young. It's really, really young. And I personally don't think the proper medical protocol, the proper medical process could have possibly taken place in that amount of time with somebody at that age. Like, they're very young. I think it needs to be a much deeper, detailed process. That being said, if somebody is 17 or 16 and a half and they've been going through this process for years and years and years, and maybe they're having like really, really bad back pain or something from binding all the time, I think that that is an extreme case that top surgery should be allowed. I think there needs to be space for doctors and parents to make these exceptions for these vulnerable cases.
I don't think any minor should be having life-altering elective surgery or life-altering elective medicalization, period.
Okay, fucking period. I agree. No life-altering elective surgeries or medications for minors. Okay. What about the medically necessary ones, though? What about those? Those are allowed.
But I don't think a 16-year-old female who wants breast implants should be able to get that either. I think that whatever is if it's life-altering and it's elective, I don't think we should allow that till 18. So in most states around the country, you can't get a tattoo.
All right, well, somebody call her insurance provider. Somebody call this woman's insurance provider up, because you know that her insurance is likely paying for her hormones, likely paying for any transition-related procedures that she has done, because they recognize that gender dysphoria is a mental health condition. These procedures and these medications are a medical necessity. If you're going to argue that they are not medically necessary, then you better be paying out of pocket for all of your stuff, out of pocket for your procedures.
I'm actually vehemently against surgery, like all of it, top surgery, bottom surgery, all of it. Particularly because you need your genitals. Like, it's just that simple.
Hello.
You have these people now who have non-functioning fake penises and vaginas that, you've had issues like, for instance, Richie had, where like your urethra folds in half and then you can't pee no more. You have all these, they're just so, bottom surgery has what, like 100% complication rate? Like, if you get bottom surgery, there's a 100% chance you'll need revisions every 1 to 6 years for the rest of your life.
It's only for trans men, though.
Oh, well.
Trans women
Bottom surgery definitely does come with risks, right? It's very intense. It's intense. It's a big procedure. For me and for, hopefully everybody that has this procedure, the cons and the potential risks and stuff like that are worth it. Yes, surgeries, especially surgeries for trans people, have a lot of room to improve. But what's your point? Like, what's your point here? Because people know about the complications. People know about the risks. People know about the horror stories that happen. And they're still choosing to get this procedure done because it is so medically necessary. The whole, you can't have surgery. You need your genitals. I have my genitals, sir. Just don't talk about my genitals like that. Secondly, that's really cool for you. And I'm glad that you can survive in your transition without having to have surgeries, but that's not a realistic solution to anything. For some people, these procedures are necessary. For some minors, the most extreme cases, these procedures are necessary. Like, I cannot believe these medicalistic transsexuals, binary transsexuals, who have been out here this whole time complaining about how being trans is a medical thing and how non-binary doesn't fit onto their medical definition of being trans and all this kind of stuff. I can't believe those same people are out here now saying that their medical interventions that they had since being trans, for being trans, were not medically necessary. Like, what? The lack of awareness and understanding of different experiences is astounding. Like, just because it wasn't urgently necessary for you, doesn't mean it isn't for other people.
I mean, just surgery in general. I don't think that that's necessarily like you said. It's not like you have appendicitis. It's not like you've got like a bone spur. It's like you don't.
I disagree with
not
that because I was in
surgery-
physical pain, and the moment that I got that top surgery, the pain was
Well, that's
alleviated.
not that means you need a breast reduction, my friend.
No, it's just
No,
binding.
that's
The
for binding
goes
in general.
crazy.
It
I mean, I
causes
binded
some
for 8
issues.
years. I know, like it
I know,
sucks,
but like if you just keep binding, like honestly, like my ribs are like, I'm like, ew, I hate my ribs. Like they're all like messed up.
I think there are few things more vile, more irresponsible, more, dangerous than saying a child can consent to permanently removing a body part that serves an extremely important function. Detransitioners all over the country can never breastfeed their children if they can even have them, because if they did other things, that can stop them from having kids at all, right? The idea that a child can consent to a sex change, to gender affirming surgery, if you believe that, there's really nothing that you can believe they can't consent to, right? Because that's pretty extreme. That's permanent.
She's so extreme. She's so like dramatic. Children can't consent to chopping off body parts. Obviously. Thank you, Blair. Like, we're talking about 16 to 17-year-olds, maybe, right? Not 12-year-olds, not 13-year-olds. As I've already said, that's very young. Some places, 16 or 17 is the age for medical consent anyways. Plus, it would still be vital to have that in-depth process and be firm on it. These people could have been seeking care for years and years and years, and it could be medically necessary not only to alleviate their gender dysphoria, but to alleviate physical pain or potential permanent damage to their ribs due to binding. Saying all these dramatic and inflammatory words, using a dramatic and sinister intonation to say how she wants to protect children, but then advocating for the opposite is crazy. As for comparing consenting to having top surgery to consenting to other things, which, like sex, that is just the craziest false comparison I've ever heard in my life. You cannot compare medical consent to consenting to everything, right? There's no doctors, medical protocol, parents' involvement. There's none of that when it comes to giving consent for sexual behavior. It's a very, very different thing. And comically enough, I have to point it out, the only people that support allowing children to consent to sexual activity as minors is conservatives like Matt Walsh. You're playing for the wrong team if you really care about kids. Allowing doctors and parents and medical professionals to make the best, most informed decision about care is not the same as allowing children to consent to sex. That is a horribly flawed and damaging comparison. In this same video, Blair has compared gender dysphoria to cancer to justify the medicalization of the trans identity, but now she's going the other way and saying that gender affirming care is not medically necessary. It's the same as doing heroin or getting a tattoo or body modification. So to just follow your line of logic, is allowing a child to consent to receiving chemotherapy for their cancer diagnosis. Is that child abuse? Because it could potentially sterilize them, right? And they have cancer, which is very similar to gender dysphoria. Like you said, I highly doubt if we were talking about any other medical condition like cancer, you would deny a child the right to access the best medication possible. I mean, maybe she wouldn't. It is Blair.
So you want to move aside all the complications, all the things you can't do, the sterilization, not being able to feed your kids. You can even set that aside. Just the permanent body modification. I mean, you have to be so demented to believe that a child fully understands. I heard a few conversations about, well, if the child fully understands, they don't. They don't.
5
The
years,
prompt was
it's
about
like-
minors, and
Yeah, but
12-year-olds
17-year-olds
are
is
getting
minor.
top surgery. So it's easy to say, well, if it's 17-year-olds, okay, well,
In my state, that's actually
there's a
legal
nuanced
age.
conversation about even 17-year-olds, I guess, because the age of consent in some places is lower, but that's not what's happening, right? It's 12-year-olds.
So when we talk about
It's people
I'm
being
sorry.
sterilized for life before they can even drive a car. In California, the state we're in, hello, you can't go in a tanning bed until you're 18.
Tanning beds are not medically necessary, girl. Listen, if a tanning bed could cure my gender dysphoria, I'd be in there. I'd be in there at 12. I'm just kidding, I'm sorry.
But you can hack off your breasts, you can sterilize yourself, you can permanently alter yourself at all. Because in every other way of permanent body modification, you can't. You can't get a tattoo, you can't get a piercing, and like I said, tanning bed. Like insane.
When we talk about minors, it's like what?
This bitch just compared chemotherapy to a tanning bed. Just to make that clear for y'all.
Now, I have a lot of empathy for those detransitioners that have gone through the process and they are suffering. I
it's
do
not
have
just
empathy for
detrans
that.
people. It's
But
not
I'm
just
just, but that's
detrans
where
people.
I'm just talking about in the conversation for this particular conversation. And I understand what you're saying because you're absolutely right. There are more people
Even
that are
among
doing
adults,
that.
we all
But-
do different things in
but-
our transition.
Correct.
Some of us want bottoms, some of us don't. Some of us want tops, some of us don't.
I
So
understand,
you
but-
need a lot of time as an adult to figure out what you want to do.
So are you advocating for a waiting period to access gender affirming care as an adult? Because personally, I think that adults should be able to, utilize informed consent, like I've been saying this whole time. Like for minors, yes, the proper protocol is necessary, but for an adult, self-ID is the most fair way to do it. Like, are you going to implement a waiting period for people that want to get like nose jobs? Like it's not even a medically necessary procedure, and yet people can just walk in and get one.
Is though some adults don't even understand what they want to do. So that's the
Exactly,
kind
so
of
how
thing.
can a child?
But
I
see,
wanna-
children.
I wanna touch
Wait a
on
minute.
one
Let's
thing
not
you said.
let's not
Planet.
underestimate the power of these kids today. Okay, they are very much more educated because they have much more resources and access than we did
Wow.
coming up. So let's be
So
very
they're
clear about
advanced
that.
and they can
when we
consent.
talk
Who
about
else says that?
detransition,
Saying that children are more advanced is not a good point. We do rely on the medical protocol to protect these children because that is important. But I do agree in a way because, the trans person themselves, even if they are a minor, they are the ones that are dealing with this pain every day. They're the ones that are experiencing it every day. So while they should have a team next to them and helping them through it and helping them navigate the way that they're feeling, we also need to believe that what they're experiencing is real.
I enjoyed this debate for what it was. It was quite ugly at certain points, and I wish that it was all trans people on the panel because that would have been more appropriate,
can't.
more fitting.
Oh, you're so offensive. You're an offensive
Okay.
person, human being. yeah.
Okay.
So wild. She thinks that she's so funny. Like, there's just no need. You're just being mean to be mean. Like, you're just trying to get your cute little, like, gotcha moment. It's not cute. And then this is something that people did kind of criticize me for in the last video was I said that she said that the other panelist was disgusting, which she did. She does say that in a second. I'll play it. But the critiques that I have gotten have said that, oh, well, the other person said it first. The other person said it first. Y'all need to listen to the context, though, okay? Blair randomly says, I wish that it was all trans people here just throwing in that one last jab towards Alexander for no reason. So yeah, that is an offensive thing to do. It's just being mean to be mean. After that, they said, well, you're a disgusting person because that's a disgusting thing to do. And Blair responded with, yeah, I think that some things over here are disgusting as well, referring to Alex's non-binary identity. And at least that's what my interpretation of it was.
Okay,
Just so
well,
you know.
I find a lot of things over here offensive as well.
Oh, wow. Yeah, you're disgusting.
And I have to, trust me, the
okay.
feeling is
Bye.
more
You
than
think
mutual.
children can consent?
And I will say that what is really disgusting is finding excuses for child abuse, right? Finding excuses for reasons or processes that should be in place for a child to sterilize themselves. There's a word called consent that you guys seem to be able to use in other contexts. We're gonna try to add it to body mutilation. But I will say that it was very enlightening and I hope to be back at Jubilee soon.
You heard it here from Blair first. No chemotherapy for the children. None. Hopefully this video was not ridiculously long. Thank you so much for making it to the end. You're a real one. Thank you guys so much for watching. And yeah, I hope you enjoyed the context. Bye, everyone.